Okay, so have you ever, like, really thought about those baseline tests in Blade Runner 2049?
Oh, yeah, totally. Like, from the replicant's point of view?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're pretty freaky, right?
Definitely.
Well, today, we're going to deep dive into those.
Cool.
There's this really interesting YouTube video
Okay, yeah.
that breaks them down.
Nice.
And it's, I think you'll find it pretty thought-provoking. It kind of gets under your skin.
For sure. I mean, those tests they're more than just a way to control replicants, right?
Yeah.
They kind of show us the whole power dynamic, like, in that world,
Exactly.
Who decides what's normal? What happens when, like, your whole identity is defined by someone else?
Yeah, and it makes you think, like, what would happen if we had those tests in the real world?
Oh, man.
So before we get into the video, let's just do a quick recap of what the baseline test is, just in case.
Right, yeah.
Basically, in the Blade Runner universe, replicants are like bioengineered humans, right?
Mm.
And they're made to be obedient to serve humans,
Right.
And so these tests are these really intense psychological evaluations.
Mm.
And they're supposed to make sure that the replicants are emotionally stable, that they're not going to, like, go off the rail.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And, like, the technology behind them is never really explained.
Right.
But you got to think it's pretty advanced, right? I mean, these replicants are, like, almost identical to humans.
Yeah.
So the test has to be able to, like, really dig deep, find any hint of, like, independent thought or emotion.
Yeah.
Anything that could, upset the whole system.
And what's interesting about this YouTube video is it actually has, like, excerpts from what seems to be like an official baseline test transcript.
Oh, wow.
And they have some visuals, too, so you can kind of get a feel for what it would be like to actually be there taking the test.
That's intense.
Yeah, and the language they use is just, like, so chilling. Like, in the first excerpt, the officer administering the test, he uses words like cells, interlinked, dreadfully distinct. It's like he's intentionally trying to remind the replicant that they're not a person,
Totally.
that they're just like a collection of parts.
Yeah, it's dehumanizing. And I think that's the whole point, right? To make the replicant feel less than human.
Yeah.
Like they're a machine, not a person.
Mm-hmm.
That way they're less likely to, question their place or rebel.
Yeah, it's like, it's like they're trying to force them into this box, right? And, like, they're not allowed to have any individuality.
Exactly. And then there's that visual they use, a tall white fountain.
Yeah, fountain, right.
It's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, why a fountain?
Why not something, more, like, I don't know, threatening or something?
Yeah.
But I think it's actually really clever, the symbolism.
Ooh, okay, tell me more about that.
Fountains, they're often seen as symbols of control over nature.
Oh, okay.
Like humans bending the natural world to their will, and then the color white, that kind of reinforces that sense of artificiality.
Yeah.
Like, it's sterile. It's manufactured, not born. And in Blade Runner 2049, like, corporations literally control the environment.
Right.
So, like, this image takes on a whole other level of meaning.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So let's move on to the second excerpt. And this is where things get really, really interesting. So the replicant, he's been giving these, like, robotic, emotionless answers, and then all of a sudden he just had this outburst about a kid.
Wow.
And it's like this crack in the facade, like, for a second you see the real person underneath.
And this deviation from the breathline is like, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It suggests that the replicant might actually have genuine emotions, memories, even maybe a sense of family, which are all things that replicants are not supposed to have.
Right, exactly.
And, of course, the officer immediately picks up on it. She accuses the replicant of being, like, miles off his baseline.
Yeah.
And, like, in this world, that's not just, a bad test score.
Mm-hmm.
It's a threat. It's a death sentence, basically. Replicants who fail the baseline test, they get retired.
Yeah.
Which we all know what that means.
Right.
So the stakes are super high here.
Yeah.
The seemingly simple test, It's actually this tool of oppression. It's used to, like, maintain that power imbalance.
Yeah, between humans and replicants.
Totally.
And this is what I think makes this so relevant,
Yeah.
Even outside the film, it makes you think about all the ways that we categorize people in the real world.
Yeah.
How we judge people.
Oh, yeah.
What happens when we try to force people to conform to, like, our idea of what's normal.
Yeah.
Who gets to decide what's acceptable? What the deviation, who's in, who's out.
Exactly. It's like, if you think about replicants as like a metaphor for any marginalized group, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's based on race or gender or anything else, the baseline test becomes this like chilling reminder,
Yeah.
about the dangers of dehumanization and control.
Yeah. It's heavy stuff. So, I mean, we've talked about the chilling nature of the baseline tests. We've kind of uncovered some of the hidden meanings behind the language and the imagery.
Yeah.
And we've touched on some pretty big ethical questions about, AI. But I think this YouTube video, it really just brings it home.
Yeah.
It makes it visceral. It makes it personal.
It really makes you think, like, what if I was the one being tested?
Yeah.
Like, what parts of me would be considered okay and what would make me the other?
Yeah. That's a great question to leave people with. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, this was a good one.
Into Blade Runner 2049 and kind of the unsettling truths that it reveals about ourselves, I think.
It really makes you think.
So until next time.
See ya.